We did a series over collars, and we learned how to make a couple different collar patterns, and how to go from start to finish. And we made a business collar, we made a collar stand, and then we made two types of straight collars, one regular straight collar, and we'll spend probably the next 5 or 6 videos going over that. So this will now start our intro to interfacing sessions. Now, let's start off by talking about the types of interfacings. Now, basically, there's 2 types of interfaces. You got sew-in, and then you have fusible. I think that's spelled right. Now, sew-in is basically just when you have it's a type of fabric, but it's stiff. And they come in different weights. You can get something that's lighter, and or you can get something that's much thicker. Or not thicker, but well, yes, thicker, but also much more stiff, and that's going to give you more body and structure to your garment. And then the same thing goes with fusible, except for with fusibles you won't get the stiffness so much because the fusibles have some type of adhesive or glue on one side of the interfacing that will, when it's heated up and it's merged or interfaced onto a piece of fabric, then it basically gives the fabric that body then once it does that. And you can get that in different weights too. Now, also, they come in like 3 different kinds. There's the woven, and that's, it's basically the same. They kind of mirror your fabrics. And then there's a 3rd kind. So you have woven, which is like muslin or cotton or something. It's similar to that because it's just woven. You have knit, which goes with knit fabrics, and it has the ability to stretch with the knit fabric so that you don't have pieces of your knit fabric that don't stretch, and you might need it to stretch. It just might need a little extra structure, a little extra body. So you have that, and then you also have the non-woven, as they call them. Now this interfacing, which I'm sure if you've been sewing for any amount of time, you probably come across this kind. The non-woven, I think, is the kind that most of us use most frequently when we're first beginning to sew. And the non-woven is that kind that's, if you pull on it, it comes apart, and it's really gross. And personally, I hate using non-woven interfacing just because it comes apart, and after you have a garment that's gone through the washing machine and dryer a couple times, that woven interfacing starts to come off of the garment. So, in my opinion, it's a waste of money. I actually have a big old bolt of woven interfacing. I love it because it's like fabric. It's like muslin that's really loosely woven, and you can pretty much see through it. And the bolt that I have is black, and I'll show it to you in another video later on this week. But anyway, I love it. It has little dots of interfacing glue on one side, and it just looks like fabric. So if you pull on it, it's not going to come apart. It adds that stability that you need in your garments. It doesn't add a whole lot of bulk. So I love it. I love it. The knit kind, I haven't come across too much. So I'm not really sure what to tell you about the knit kind. And I'm not an expert in interfacing, think what you will, but I'm not. I just want to educate you a little bit and give you a little bit of the knowledge that I have accumulated so far. So now, how do you know what needs interfacing? If you have a store-bought pattern, it will tell you what pieces need the interfacing and the instructions. And a lot of times it will also give you a separate, what's the thing called? layout for block interfacing. Okay, now I do want to talk about block interfacing in just a moment, so we'll do that here. We'll talk about block interfacing here as opposed to piece interfacing. Okay, so that's two different ways that you can interface your fabric. But anyway, let's go back to this really quick. Okay, so if it's a store-bought pattern, it will tell you what pieces need the interfacing, and if you know if you know about fashion and you have an understanding, like for instance, if you buy a pattern for like some type of jacket, and you want that extra crispy feel, especially in the chest area of the jacket, so it can kind of look like you bought it out of a store maybe. So if you have an understanding of how the interfacing goes in jackets, you already know, what to add. So you can add to these instructions from your own knowledge. Okay, so you can add to this because when you go get a store-bought pattern, they're going to give you the simplest, easiest way because they want it to be able to benefit the largest amount of people, okay? But if you already kind of know how you want the garment to end up or what you want it to look like, and it doesn't tell you how to do a certain piece of it, then you might want to add to it or take from it because there might be something that you don't think needs interfacing or you have a different idea. Now I do want to go back up here and add something also to the woven. You can actually do woven interfacing, or you can layer your fashion fabric. And that will give you a little more body there also. I know there's some guy, I think it starts with a CH or something. There's some really expensive dress shirt maker who I think instead of using interfacing in his fabrics to not take away from the characteristics of the fabric, he just doubles the layers of his fabric. So he might add, I think it's maybe like 5 or 6 layers of fabric. It might be more, it might be less, I'm not sure. But he just layers the fabric in his collars, and I think maybe also in his plackets and in his cuffs. And that way, the garment still has a nice structured feel, but it's not hard and crispy. So we'll just write that on there. We'll say gives structure without hard crispiness. Ooh, I'm spelling crazy everywhere. Okay. Okay, so we did that. You can do this, and I've actually done this, and I'll show you this later on if I remember. In the muslin dress shirt that I made a while back to kind of test something, I just did a couple extra layers in the collar, and it actually worked out really nicely. That was my first time trying that, and I loved it. So let's move on here. Store-bought fabric. Now, if this is a pattern you made, then the only way you're gonna know is if you have experience interfacing things before. Now, I'm a big believer that, excuse me, we all wear clothing. The easiest way for you to figure something out if you aren't sure about something is to be a big student of going in your closet and grab something and, just take it out and and study the garment. Grab a garment that's similar to something you're trying to make. It doesn't have to be exactly what you're trying to make, but something that has some similar design characteristics. And kind of feel around the garment. You can tell the difference between one layer of fabric and 2 layers, or one layer of fabric and a piece of fabric that might have some interfacing in it. A lot of times, quickest thing to do for factories is to just block fuse everything, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Block fuse everything, and then cut all the pieces out, and use they're using a fusible interfacing, which means it's gonna have a slight crispiness to it, especially once it's ironed. Once you start ironing it, it gets kind of it gets warm and it gets soft, and then once it cools down, it gets harder. So anyway, go in your closet, find something close to what you're making, and study it.